Okay, all right. Well, again, let's go back to Kant and let's think about the difference between intuition and concepts. A difference which really is an updated version of a very old distinction between, if you like, the singular and the universal. So intuitions are always singular for Kant. They are intuitions of this or this or this, and concepts are more generic. Now, between the two, Kant places imagination. Imagination is that faculty of retaining what's no longer present. And of course, Kant, as you know, thinks that some element of imagination is involved in all perception. Okay, now Hegel really takes over that same threefold distinction: intuition, what he calls Vorstellung, which is basically what's translated as picture thinking, and then concept. And he also talks about language more than Kant does, but nonetheless, he keeps that basic Kantian threefold division. So what is picture thinking? Well, it's thinking that operates with Vorstellung. Now, Vorstellung is often translated as representation. It's probably better translated as presentation. Although, oddly enough, representation has an element of truth to it, because it's a Vorstellung is not present in the way that an intuition is. You know, the books in front of you, this computer here, I can intuit them, I see them, I feel them, I hear them, they're there. Vorstellungen are always interiorized, they're at one remove from being present. So they're set before, Vorstellen is just to set before, they're set before the mind. They have and intuited, that's a sensuous either content or form, and they represent a sort of a transitional stage between intuition and concepts. And Hegel thinks they are what most of us do most of our thinking with. I mean, we also exercise understanding, but we do a lot of our thinking in everyday life. Poetry works within the realm of Vorstellung, stroke imagination. Religion does. Our metaphors with which we sort of pepper our language, all that's Vorstellung. Okay, so I said they can have either a sensuous form or content. A sensuous content is fairly easy to understand. I mean, in a way, just think of the tree outside your window, close your eyes and sort of picture it in your mind. That's already an example of Vorstellung. But I think what's more interesting for philosophy, for Hegel, is the fact that Vorstellung can have a sensuous form. So what gives them their form? Well, the form of being individuated, the form of being, as it were, almost sort of separated off from something else. So Vorstellungen, Hegel says, are connected really by the word and. There's God, and God's omniscience, and God's omnipotence, and eternity, and there are finite things, and there's creation. That is a typical way of thinking in terms of Vorstellung. I think it was Wittgenstein, but I may have got this wrong, who says it's a thinking that just talks of one bloody thing after another. Basically, that's Vorstellung. So what does it lack compared to understanding and then speculative reason? Well, compared to understanding, it lacks necessity. It lacks the idea of necessary connection. So Vorstellung doesn't really have a strong sense of necessary interconnectedness. And compared to Hegel's speculative thinking, it doesn't have a dialectical moment. Concepts don't turn into their opposites. They don't dynamically transform themselves. So I suppose that's what picture thinking would be. So an example of that, I mean, I suppose the easiest example to think of is the difference between philosophy and religion as Hegel conceives it. Hegel thinks that philosophy, speculative philosophy, and religion, principally Protestant Christianity, share the same content. They both tell the same story about the world. Philosophy says reason, the idea, becomes incarnate in nature and human beings and comes to self-consciousness, becomes spirit in and through human beings. Hegel thinks Christianity tells the same story. It just talks about God creating a world, becoming incarnate, and becoming, resurrected as Holy Spirit. But Hegel thinks that the same content is being presented in two different forms. The form of philosophy is that of concepts. The form of religion is not exclusively, but largely to do with Vorstellung. And so, whereas philosophy will talk about the idea, religion will talk about God the Father. Whereas philosophy will talk about, and I have to say, it's not the clearest bit of Hegel, but about the way in which the idea discloses itself to be nature. Religion will talk about God the Father creating nature. Creation then being, as it were, a metaphor, an image for the process that philosophy describes. And also, religion tells the story of the idea becoming spirit as a story, as a narrative.
Yeah.
As a narrative that's both poetically structured and historically structured. So that all belongs to Vorstellung. So I would say that if you think of it in terms of Vorstellungen, picture thinking operates with either internalized images drawn from sensuous experience or ideas drawn from thought, but given sort of an isolated status. So they're connected through the and, or they're connected just in terms of this happens and then this happens and then this happens and then this happens. That's basically picture thinking. And Hegel's not trying to eliminate it. He's not trying to eliminate it. He just doesn't think it's appropriate for philosophy. But, I mean, and this is contentious, I guess, but my view is Hegel thinks that, human beings cannot live by concepts alone. They need intuitions, they need imagination, they need bodily experience. They need lots of things to be, and they need to experience the truth through all of these. So that's why art and religion, for example, are crucial for Hegel. And so knowing the truth through picture thinking is important. It's just not what philosophy does. Although, of course, famously, Hegel has, and particularly in the preface to the Phenomenal, a lot of very riveting and arresting pictures.